Mowry Lane. So, I'm back trying to write ghost stories again, I told Julia. You're back trying to write ghost stories again, Molly? Or a ghost story, as in singular. My friend, you've been obsessed with writing a ghost story. What, now, since we left university? She said, as the train lurched forward. Well, that's the thing, you know, I replied. I've written novels, some of which have done well, populating whole fantastical worlds with centuries of history and events and empires, human and non, rising and falling, struggling to decide where in the world I've created I should plunge my reader. But I long for something simple. I just can't make a ghost story work. I can write a story with a ghost in it, but I end up writing it from the perspective of a ghost. That's not a ghost story at all, even though it's about a ghost. No. A ghost story must be experienced by a human who is stunned they've met the ghost. And the ghost can hardly be stunned by meeting themselves. Falling into your dark thoughts again, Molly, aren't you? Asked Julia. That's what you do. You wander around in your elaborate fantasy worlds, other realities, for your novels, hoping to find some kind of answers, or some kind of magic to yield answers, or to change the answers you can't accept. And when that doesn't work, you come back to that ghost story you can never write. You know me too well, Miss Humphreys. It's Mrs. Owens now, she said. Why is it that you think you can find your solace in a ghost story? It strikes me these other worlds you create would do your soul better. For that longing, or something that never was, or can't be, or an answer to a question you can't frame, whose purpose is to dull and ache. What would a ghost do? Ghosts are here and now, I said. They're just outside our immediate reach, just 1 inch away from our common life. So if I can find a ghost, maybe that's the breadcrumb trail. See? The ghost story can be set in a location just slightly afield from one the reader knows. If not one, the reader knows exactly. Perhaps that's it. Perhaps if I find the perfect location for a ghost story, then I can get over this hump of not being able to write it properly. Well, my dear Dr. Danvers, my friend replied, teasing me always, as I had been one of the first women to graduate from the University of London with a Doctor of Literature. What location would you use? You can't simply use inversion. You couldn't have the ghost story take place at high noon, or in the middle of a crowd in town, or the height of summer, or smush them all together. 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the middle of Piccadilly on a summer's day. But it's been done. Dr. James has done it very well. So you don't want to just be emulating Dr. James. He already has enough emulators, though I do quite enjoy some of them. No, but perhaps that's it. Some small change in the setting, in the nature of it. In a ghost story, even where one is in a crowd, you see an entire sea of anonymous faces, but only the protagonist, only the proxy through which the reader experiences the story, sees the ghost. The others ignore them. What if the entire assembled crowd saw the ghost? Julia fidgeted slightly with her granny boot, unzipping it, trying to itch an itch without drawing too much attention from the man seated 3 rows up from us. Then she spoke. How would you do that, Molly? I mean, how would they all know it was a ghost? Would it be translucent and grey carrying its head? Do they talk to one another about it? Does one man say to another, "By my word, it's a ghost"? "Excuse me, miss," said a man in a northern country accent, "but do you mean to be writing about the Mowry Lane ghost? 'Cause I don't seen as anyone's written much about it yet." Initially, when he had said, "Excuse me" to us, I thought he was scandalised by Julia lowering her boot a few inches. But before I could respond to the man, my itchy-footed friend responded for me. She said, "Doctor, actually. A doctor of letters, not a miss." "My pardon. And what do you call a lady doctor?" the man asked, genuinely. "You call her doctor, my good sir," said Julia, dismantling sexism while propping up classism, all in the same intonation of her voice. "No, actually, thank you, but no. I'm discussing writing a work of fiction. I do have a friend, though, who likes to catalogue old legends, I said, trying to have a more conciliatory tone with the man than my friend had. I don't believe it's an old legend, mind you. It's been happening. Not even since Tuesday before last, the man said. Been happening? Do tell, I asked. As much as what I overheard you saying, pardon me, I do have a habit, badly, of eavesdropping, but I always erase from my mind any gossip I hear about persons I know or don't know. But when you said that, it caught my ear. About a ghost walking through a whole crowd of people, and them talking to one another about it as it does. And I figured, well, that's exactly the thing that's happening in Mowry Lane. And it's not in the newspapers? Julia asked. That's just it, ma'am. I thought perhaps your friend was going to write a column on it. There's a man. He's a bit see-through, but mostly solid. Grey, with a shade of colour. Blue denim pants, pear, peacoat of black wool, like a sailor. Tinted glasses. What can be seen of him? As I said, he is grey, but with a slight bit of colour over him. And he walks from starting a few feet in front of the butcher shop in Mowry Lane, walks straight down, makes a slight turn onto the drive that would go into the consignment shop there. Or once it did, I don't know if you know those parts. But the consignment shop has a bit of a walk up to it with trees. And before he gets there, he vanishes. And he does so at exactly 3:02 in the afternoon. Every day. And no one's written about this? I asked incredulously. Well, that's the thing, miss. Everyone is saying, including those who even believes in such things, that this one is not a ghost. It's too regular. And most folks say, well, must be a man in a costume. But at this point, more than a good 100 folk have put their hand in him. And they say it's a bit cold, like fog. But despite all that, it goes... Well, a ghost doesn't appear in front of that many groups of folks, and at the same time every day, like clockwork. So it must be something someone is doing, as a stunt, or a promotion, or something, or this or that. So that's the mystery. Of course, when it first happened, people were saying it was a ghost. But now everyone is convinced he must be of man's making, and we're all just waiting for the great revelation of how it's done. But, if you don't believe my account, you can take this train on into town. Yes, I quite know where Mowry Lane is. And well, what do you say, Julia? I have nothing else to do. Shall we go see this ghost that's not a ghost? When the man left, my friend got a smirk from me. Maybe it will inspire my story. I'm curious if he's telling the truth, or if it's a drunkard's tale. But I tend to think it's so. You believe we're going to go and see a ghost this very afternoon? Julia asked. No, I said. I believe the man is right. It must be some sort of optics or mirrors. Though you remember Stephen Malone, that boy from America that was chasing after me? Well, he was fascinated by that sort of thing, projection and photography, and theories on how a solid three-dimensional image could be made. But surely, even if there were such a thing as ghosts, as the gentleman told us, they wouldn't be so regular. What I'm wondering about, Julia said, is if this is true, why it's not in the newspapers, even if just as a small piece of interest, no more than a few inches of copy. I suppose, doesn't Jack Barrow still write for the Courier? We'll go and see our clockwork unghost, and then we will see if dear Jack can tell us why it's not being written about. He seemed like he was going to lose his breath when he heard you were a doctor, Molly, Julia said. I suppose he thinks a pair of tits means someone can't be a doctor. Why must you do that, Julia? You use slang that isn't yours, borrowed from the working class. Is that how you try to show you're a supporter of suffrage? By cursing? But you're such a classist. Aside from which, even if you were to meet a man on a train, it's not like most people you meet are titled with Doctor. You know there's nothing wrong with the word tits. Perfectly fine word. It wasn't even considered vulgar or of the masses until the Norman invasion. That's also, my dear, why we don't say I should have a piece of pig or a piece of cow tonight, and for that matter, shit was a perfectly legitimate word. And I can also tell you that... That's enough, Julia. I'm fully aware of all this. And yes, I'm aware words have no power in and of themselves. But my upbringing was that it is somewhat offensive to use these terms, which is somehow only heightened by your theft of them, from a portion of society whom you look down upon. I know it's all constructed, but your usage of them is forced. And my brain's reaction to them is autonomic, dear. The rest of our train journey was relatively incident-free. There was some discussion of a few things that had been going on in Parliament, and that sort of thing. Julia then went on about theatre, not remembering that I could care less about the theatre, and knew very little about it, or anything that was happening in that world this season, and we found ourselves at 2:40 p.m. on Mowry Lane. There was a decent enough crowd assembled, but fewer people than I had thought. But at exactly 3:02 p.m., for we had our attention on the spot we'd been told to look at by the man on the train, once the clock struck. The hour and 2 minutes went by, there he appeared, exactly as the man described. About 3/4 solid, but with some transparency to him. Mostly grey, but as if someone had begun to add just a tint of colour to him. And from that, it could be seen. His pants were a blue denim, some colour to his skin, and his tinted glasses had a pinch of red to them. There was something odd about the assembling of his clothes, both upper class and lower, formal and informal. But beyond that, something wasn't quite right. Had I seen him on my own, I would have assumed him to be a ghost or a hallucination. But some people didn't even bother to look. It's not that they didn't notice. They glanced up for a moment, but then turned away as if it were nothing more common than a policeman coming to direct carriage traffic. Others looked, or pointed to their friends, as if vindicated. Apparently, a number of onlookers had been brought there by a prior witness who hadn't been believed when they had recounted their tale. And yes, 1 or 2 people came up and ran their hand right through him. But no one was astonished or questioning their reality. So I suppose I didn't either. I presumed immediately, whatever this was a product of human technical wizardry, and I had to deduce its origin. Yet still, Julia was always more gregarious than me, so she talked to 1 or 2 people in the crowd after the man had vanished in front of the consignment shop, as he was said to do. And they could shed no more light on it than the man on the train. The third person she talked to said he believed it was being done by hypnotic suggestion. I asked him where entire crowds of people who had never been together would be exposed to hypnotic suggestion to see something collectively later. For that, he didn't have a response, but seemed annoyed. Although I had not been trying to burst his theory, only to follow it up. After the crowd thinned even further, we looked along the track of the path the man had walked on. Was there anything where lights could be projected up out of the ground, or where someone could walk below while something was sent up? But no, it was solid pavement. We went in and around the opening of the lane and into the consignment shop, and nothing. The butcher shop was closed, but I don't think we would have found anything notable had it been open and we could have poked our noses about. "What, shall we go to see that little friend of yours at the newspaper?" Julia asked. In what way was he little? I thought to myself. His station in life? Good Lord, my friend is a classist. Realising it would be better to go in toward the end of Jack's office hours, we got tea and sandwiches in a hotel that was reasonably near his office, where he worked for the Courier. And when I felt it would be near the quieter time of his day, we set off. As the sun was setting and the liminal period came in, the slow unease I had with the whole thing crept in. And despite the queerness of it all, the fact that the odd assembly of his clothes didn't seem quite right. The coat, the denim trousers. I had seen similar things, but not quite cut exactly as those. And the whole thing perturbed me greatly. If it just weren't for that, if his outfit were more common. The slow gnawing that I was, in fact, dealing with something very otherworldly, wouldn't have been there. And what bothered me more is why the tipping of the scales over into that feeling I was having was done by an aspect of the occurrence that seemed most trivial. The short walk to the building Jack's offices were in was completed, and so, for now, we made our way in to talk to my friend.